Welcome all. We're glad you're here for the Roundabout. If you weren't here last month, um, the Roundabout, the intent, or not 2 months ago, we're doing it every other month. The intent of the Roundabout is a discussion about transportation, so hence the Roundabout connection there, but also to encourage a more of a roundtable discussion so that we can all share ideas and that sort of thing. For today's session, my intent is to go over some funding opportunities that I know about that might be of interest to cities and counties and such throughout the state. And then I've got some hints and tips type things, kind of working through the grant application process. And then hopefully there might be someone on here that has successfully been awarded a grant opportunity funding, and we can kind of ask each other questions. If not, whatever kind of questions everybody might have, just to have a little discussion that way. So welcome. I am looks like there's still at least one person in the waiting room, so I won't get too far into it yet. Hope you're all enjoying a nice spring day today. Be nice if we don't have quite so much wind. That would be good. Looks like we've got quite a few different people represented here today, so I think that will hopefully lead to some good discussions as we move forward. And as people finish joining, we're going to put some links in the chat room. I believe that's where they're going to be, so that you can access some of the resources I'm going to be talking about. The other thing I wanted to mention is that we've been doing some training on road safety assessments throughout the state. That's taken up a lot of my time the last month or so. We've got, and these are focused on vulnerable road users. So we've got 3 more trainings coming up in Salina and Pittsburgh and Hayes. If you're interested in any vulnerable road user road safety assessment training, these are free, all day. You should have probably seen emails about that already, but if not, if you go to our website, the easiest way to get there is ksltap.org, and go to our training. Up at the top, there's an option for RSAs, and that will get you to be able to register for those. They're day-long trainings, basically 9 to 4, 4:30ish, and free lunch. We'll go out and do kind of a mock road safety assessment as part of that. So if anyone's interested in that, we'd love to have you. I think all 3 of those, we still have some seats available. And if not, we're going to be doing the same training the next 2 years. Again, all throughout the state, there's 8 each year. So something to look forward to if you haven't done that already. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. This document can be found in the chat as well. There we go. hopefully. Are you, can someone unmute and make sure that you're seeing the funding opportunities screen?
I know, yes, we can see it.
Yep, we can see it.
I moved a little portion of it and I wasn't sure if that changed things. And let me get this a little bigger so hopefully you can see it better. So I try to keep this up to date. And it's now living on our LTAP website. So you can download it if you want, or you can just view it on your screen, either way. These are all the funding opportunities that I'm aware of that cities or counties, locals are eligible to apply for. As we'll talk about a little bit later, that's important to know whether you're an eligible entity to receive funding. I'm not going to go through all of these. I've highlighted some that are ones that people are usually most interested in, or ones that are through KDOT, because those, you know, are probably going to be the most relevant to cities and counties. I will point out, so these are, it starts out just in order of when their application deadlines are. So for example, the first one is due on April 22nd. It's a congestion relief program. It's through a Federal Highway Administration, and then there's a link to the website to get more information on those. The three that are considered MPDG, those are really big projects, but I didn't highlight them because they're so big. And my thought is that the people attending this webinar, especially, are probably not looking at a huge project yet. But if you are, they've kind of grouped those three together: the infra, the mega, and the rural. Project application deadlines are May 6th. And then getting into ones that are a little more exciting for locals, the Safe Streets and Roads for All program. Today I'm not going to go into details about all of these, but it has a safety focus. There were three application deadlines for planning and demonstration grants. The first one was just last week, but there's two more opportunities for that: May 16th and August 29th. And then the implementation grant deadline is May 16th. So that's for actually constructing a project. I see a question from Justin Mader. Go right ahead.
Do you know, has any local government from Kansas, have they been awarded an implementation grant for the SS4A?
I think the City of Independence has. Federal Highway Administration did a kind of a safety action plan for them, kind of as a demonstration a couple of years ago. And
Okay.
so then they applied for funding for one of the priorities on their list there. So I believe they were awarded a project.
Okay. And the only reason I'm asking, because I can't remember who told me, but they changed the requirements for the implementation, you know, being awarded an implementation grant. I think you got it, you're scored, and you know, there's a minimum score to even be eligible, and that minimum score from like 1 to 100 is really, really high.
Well, probably so. I think the implementation portion of the SS4A program is very competitive. So I'm sure they probably do have pretty high scoring.
Mhm. Okay.
Now, on the other extreme, the planning grants, as far as I know, everyone who is eligible to apply and who filled out the paperwork correctly has been awarded a planning grant.
Right.
And one difference that they're kind of promoting this year, I think, personally, I think it's so that they can spend more money in that planning portion, is that you can also include demonstration projects as part of your planning application. The intent is that those demonstrations that you do will help inform what is recommended in the plan. So let's say, well, you're from a county. Okay, so for a county's plan, you're working on it and you're not sure whether how to handle a certain safety situation. Would lighting be best, or would paving shoulders be best? Whatever. I don't know exactly what might be some safety improvements, but as part of your application for, it's now called planning and demonstration funding, you can say, well, we're going to try putting in lighting at these two intersections, and we're going to try adding shoulders to this section of a particular road or two, and then kind of see how that improves things, and that will help the person developing the plan decide whether to do that throughout the county, for example. So the good part is you're actually getting some improvements made as part of the planning part. Now, if more people are doing that, I don't know whether they will, whether 100% of the people who apply will get funding or not. But again, up till now, they haven't spent the amount of money that they needed to spend to stay on track. So that's a good part. Again, try not to get into too many details, but that's a good program. So make sure everybody knows about that. Again, you have until August 29th to apply for the planning and demonstration portion of that. A new program at the federal level is this Active Transportation Infrastructure Investment Program. My understanding is that it is similar to like a RAISE grant, which is now I think the infra, but where it's bigger projects, but this is focused on active transportation. So Kara, would you mind sharing that this document again? Or looks like, oh, you've got it. Thank you. Sorry. All right. And then again, some of these, if you're interested, there's information on it, but I'm not going to go into all those. There are some through KDOT that applications are accepted anytime. So if you have an economic development, for example, interest, you can go to their website and get more information about that and apply that way. Couple I would also point out the TEAP, the Traffic Engineering Assistance Program. That's to get a traffic engineering study. It's basically free, just depending on how much funding they have. But my understanding is that they haven't run out of funding yet. So that's kind of a nice thing to, as you're considering projects, to get more information on on what maybe might need to be included in your project. Again, these were all current funding opportunities. Just some.
Nelda,
Uh-huh.
this is Jenny Egging. I can speak on that TEEP program if anybody has any questions about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we run that. So yeah, just
Right.
reach out to me. And you're right, we have funds available now for any type of traffic studies that counties or cities may want to look at to see if there's anything they need to do in order to increase their, make it safer.
Yeah, and provide that data.
Yeah.
To help inform.
Yep, but you're gonna get a traffic study report at the end of it,
Yes.
free of charge. Yep.
I didn't know, the reason I said I wasn't sure is because I've been telling a lot of people about it that didn't know about it. So I hate to say there's funding available when there maybe isn't. So I appreciate hearing it. So
Yes.
anyway, just some abbreviations I use there, just for your information too. And then if you go on down, we have expected ones that and maybe Jenny, or I think I saw Bill was on too. CCLIP, the City Connecting Link Improvement Program, is through KDOT. Do we know when that call for projects is going to be coming? I'm assuming soon.
Yeah, I do not know that. Bill is on. I don't know.
I thought I saw his name earlier.
I don't know if he would know either.
This is Kristen Zimmerman with PEC, and I think this current round of CCLIP was due at the end of March, like March 24th or something like that.
Oh, wow.
Yes, well, yeah, on that, I didn't know if there was like another one I didn't know about, Nelda, but yeah, so we're reviewing the applications right now and setting up on-site meetings to go to the towns and visit about that. So
I hadn't.
Thank you, Kristen.
Yes, I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
I hadn't seen anything on it, so I didn't know that that was out there. So I will get this updated when I can. So we'll change this to spring of 2025.
Maybe early spring.
Yes.
Early spring.
Late
winter.
Yeah.
If you're already reviewing applications, then yes, you usually give enough time for that. So trying to get a jump start on those, that's great. Again, there's a lot of programs out there. I'm not going to go through all those, but if something really catches your attention, again, you could go to the website. Another one I'd point out is the Innovative Technology Program. It's fairly new through KDOT. They will be having a Innovative Technology Summit in August. I believe they're going to be showcasing some of the some of the projects that have received funding in the past and giving you some ideas on what you could apply for there. And then we have the two local bridge programs, the Kansas Local Bridge Improvement Program, KLBIP, and the off-system bridge program will be coming, or maybe they're out now. Need to remind them to include me so I can pass this along. Again, some more things that were out last year. So that's kind of, if, for example, like this Reconnecting Communities program was probably out in summer of 2023. And so that's why it was listed that way. Actually, there's also some information on Federal Highway's website of when they expect some of those grants. Another KDOT program is the Cost Share program. Their call for projects just ended in March. So I would for their spring call for projects. So I would expect those projects to be announced here in the next month or two, but there will be another one in the fall. This is really any type of transportation project that you want to share some costs with the state. high-risk rural roads, probably this fall. That's again, so the definition of rural can vary depending on where you are. For this instance, this is rural roads would be county roads, and specifically, and with an emphasis on major collectors, but something outside of a city. And last year, along with the high-risk rural roads program, they also sent out a call for projects for the highway safety improvement program, intersections portion. But the intersections can be rural or urban improvements there. And then the RAISE grant, I guess is still separate. What it said was that the NOFO is expected in the fall with a deadline of January 25th. So it's not out there yet, but they already know when the deadline is, I guess. And then finally, the transportation alternatives. It's again a program. It's federally funded, but it's through KDOT. They ask first for concepts, not a whole application, and those concepts were due March 1st. So you missed out on it this time. But if you are looking for funding, this is probably a good time to start thinking about what your concept might be, and we'll get into that. But their website has got a lot of great information on anything you might need to know for active transportation. So before I move forward with some discussion about the process and tips and tricks and that sort of thing, does anybody have any questions about funding specifically beyond what we've already discussed? You're welcome to unmute. You're welcome to turn on your video cameras anytime throughout here. Don't hesitate to ask questions or provide any comments, because that's the intent of this discussion.
You're saying don't be shy, huh, Nelda?
That's
Yes.
what I'm trying to get that round table discussion. But I understand that, my point is, if you have questions before I move on, this is a great time. But we'll answer questions anytime. Okay,
Yeah.
so
I was gonna say, like, and if you have any questions later, whatever, again, like, for the Bureau of Local Projects, we've got HRRR and those HSIP projects, the CCLIP projects. We don't,
the bridge.
yeah, and then KLBIP, yep. So I can, if I don't know the answers, I can find you someone who does pretty quickly.
Yep. And I would say that for any program that KDOT or Federal Highway, for that matter, administers, everybody's more than willing to answer questions and help you fill out forms and that sort of thing. So
that's what we do. I find some LPAs, they're like, well, I don't want to call you, I don't want to bother you, and I'm like, honey,
that's your job.
That's my job.
and
I like my job, so please, make me feel useful.
And I'm willing to do that too. I mean, if you're talking about a specific program, if you have a good contact, then that's a great place to go. But if you have more general questions, that's kind of what my job is too. And I'm sorry, I'm not sure I even introduced myself. Nelda Buckley. I'm the local field liaison with the Kansas Local Technical Assistance Program. So I go out and meet with cities and counties and let them know about resources that we have at LTAP for training and equipment loan and some of those kinds of things, but also about these funding resources, because that's what a lot of agencies are interested in. yes, we want to do these things. Where can we get funding? We can't do it all ourselves, which I understand. So LTAP is funded to help people. So don't hesitate to contact us. All right, so I put together some thoughts. Hopefully they're in some sort of an order here. But as we go through this, again, anytime if you have something to add or a question or whatever, feel free to jump in. But I wanted to get us moving along. So first of all, one thing to think about is whether you have a project that needs funding or whether you have an idea for a project. For an idea, you're probably going to want to look for those more planning type project or planning type funding opportunities. If you already have a specific, well thought out project, then you're going to look for more the implementation funding. Now, the gray area is the design portion where you're actually getting drawings, engineering plans for your project. Some programs, the design portion is considered part of planning. So you just, and others there, it's part of the implementation. Some funding sources will pay for the design, some will not. So it's really important to find out once you get that, once you pick a program, that you understand what it will fund and what it will not fund. What's your responsibility? So another thing is to identify a lead project manager for your agency. Even if you're also going to be hiring a consultant to do most of the lead for you, you still need somebody within your agency to be the lead and make sure things are moving forward, because it's your project. It's your community, it's your interests that need to be represented. And if possible, it would probably be good to even have somebody also within your agency that's kind of a backup in case that lead person isn't available, or they did such a great job, they're moving on to a different agency or whatever. Instead of like just losing the project altogether, then somebody can hopefully pick it up where you left off and move forward. So find that project manager from your agency. And depending on the size of the agency, you may have a project engineer already on staff. You may have a public works director, or you may have a city clerk. It kind of will depend on how your agency is set up. Somebody needs to kind of take ownership of it. You also may want to think about, depending on the size and the complexity, would it be beneficial to have a partnership with another community, another city, another county, or a group of counties even sometimes work together on projects. If you are in a metropolitan planning organization, then they may be partnering in some way. And in some cases, the state can be a partner, and we'll talk about that a little bit later too. All right. Then go to the site, walk around, make sure you understand what you are wanting to accomplish. A lot of people, when I talk about all the funding, they're like, well, I don't know where to start. we'll start with what your community's priorities are. Don't find a funding opportunity and then try to find a project that will fit with that funding opportunity. Prioritize, decide what your community's priorities are, and then it's not that difficult to find funding that might be appropriate for it. And then if you don't know what grants that are appropriate, I would suggest, so the KDOT projects or the KDOT programs are pretty straightforward, and it shouldn't be too difficult to figure out which ones of those are appropriate for your project. But if you're looking for a grant opportunity from the US DOT, Department of Transportation, some of the bipartisan infrastructure law funding, I would suggest going to the Kansas Infrastructure Hub. And I will want to share that screen with you for a quick moment here. Easy website, kshub.org. Right at the top, you're going to see that they're going to have an infrastructure summit on April 24th. And if you're looking for any kind of funding, I would encourage you to attend the summit. Unfortunately, I have another obligation, so I cannot go to that, but I think it will be a great source of information for everyone. So the Kansas Infrastructure Hub is born out of the bipartisan infrastructure law on the federal level. It's a one-stop shop for transportation, energy, broadband, water, and cybersecurity. All those types of infrastructure are funding for those are included in the bipartisan infrastructure law. So that's why they're all on this website. So any agencies in Kansas that have anything to do with any of those topics are covered on this website. And so it has information on just the bipartisan infrastructure law itself, how to apply or find grants, and see what grants are available. You can do some sorting based on what you're trying to find. And then you can also get some technical assistance. They will help with applying for grants. They're not going to do it all for you. I think there's some limitations there, but it's a great source. They have representatives that cover areas throughout the state. So I believe you get assigned a person that will actually help you work through the process. And then the final, probably most exciting part is that most recently, the state of Kansas has set aside $200 million for matches for bill grant projects. So you can get information and apply there. So when I talk about a match, most programs would be, say, 80% funded by the Federal Highway Administration or some other agency. And then it would require a 20% match from the local level. However, the state has put together funding so that they can provide that 20% match for projects that are through the bipartisan infrastructure law. So that means you may not have to put up any money yourself. You have to apply for it. It's not guaranteed, but my understanding is they're ahead of the game. There's more funding than they planned to spend by now. Anyway, there's funding out there. You only get the funding if you're awarded a federal grant. So it's not like you get that 20% anyway, but you get it if you are awarded a federal grant. Any questions about that? All right, so it's a good resource. So once you figure out a grant that you would like to apply for that seems to be something that would match your project, you want to read either the call for projects information that would come from KDOT, or at the federal level, they call it Notice of Funding Opportunity. And they're all set up basically the same format. So once you've read one, it's easier to figure out, to find the information that you're looking for others. You're going to make sure that your agency and your type of project, are eligible for that type of funding. The ones that I listed on that funding opportunities, I believe cities and counties are all eligible for those types of projects. The bipartisan infrastructure law itself has many programs that only states are eligible for. So those you would not be eligible, but many of them can be locals and states. Some are only for locals, like the Safe Streets and Roads for All program is only for locals. Others, either states or locals can apply for. Some cases it might just be tribes. I mean, you really need to read it, and you need to read about the information on types of projects. There was an example of somebody who was applying for a bridge project, and it was either on the wrong type of facility, or it was the wrong size, or the wrong rating. I don't remember exactly what it was, but you don't want to go through the whole process of filling out these applications if you or your project are not eligible. So do that. Think about the match requirements. Even if the state matches the funding, you're probably going to be making the payment first to the contractor and then getting reimbursed. A lot of times that's monthly. So if you have, say, a 10-month project, you might be responsible for 10% of the cost that you pay the contractor, and then turn around and get that reimbursement. And then you can use that reimbursement money to pay the next month, for example. So plan for at least 1 or 2 months worth of payments that you might need to be making before you get reimbursed. Just time in general. Projects take longer than most people anticipate. So first of all, just the time for award. Like Jenny was mentioning for the CCLIP projects, they're reviewing those applications. Now it takes a while for them to go through that. Every reviewing agency is going to take a little while before they can award a project. So it's probably, for most I would say a general rule there would be maybe 2 months from the time that applications are due before you even hear about an award. And in some cases, agencies want to make a big announcement. So you kind of have to figure out the announcement schedule, all that kind of thing. So just that time period first. Then some cases, most cases, there's a grant agreement that needs to be signed, especially at the federal level. That can take a while. They have standard grants, but especially for new programs, it takes even the federal government a little bit to figure out what all needs to go into their agreements. So that takes a while. some projects you may be able to get started even without that agreement. And I know KDOT encourages, go ahead and get started. Once you've received that award, you know you're going to get it. So go ahead and get started. If design is not being paid for through the award, then there's no issue with getting started on that before the award. Now, at the federal level, if they're going to pay for your preliminary engineering design portion, you cannot start that until you have that agreement signed. So think about that. Then if you're going to hire a consultant, that takes a little while on your part too. So figure in the amount of time for that. Give them time to design it, depending on the size of the project. It may take a while. There's an environmental process that you need to go through to make sure that you're meeting all those requirements. You might need to acquire right away. If you have to condemn property, that takes time to get through the court system to do that. Then once you have your actual everything's set, then you advertise. You need to allow some time for advertising, and then just time for constructing the project. Some projects, some programs, especially on the federal level, have a deadline that you have to get everything completed by. Generally, it's like 5 years or something, so it shouldn't be an issue. But if you have a larger project, it's things to consider. But as you go through all that, you're developing a schedule. And so develop a realistic schedule, especially for implementation type projects. Planning projects are going to be much shorter time frames and a little easier. A lot of grants have a frequently asked questions section. Read through those. If you have questions, again, contact the agency to clarify. If it's a federal grant, you need to register with grants.gov. You have to get a identifier and some of those kinds of things that takes several weeks. It sounds like at some point it was taking like 6 weeks. I don't know for sure, but it takes a while. So don't wait till it's time to submit your application and it's like, oh, now I need to wait all this time. So do that up front. Some projects need to be added to the state's transportation improvement program, their TIP, or the MPO's TIP. So if you need to do that, that takes a little while. Some types of programs require a benefit cost analysis. Some do not, but some do. So just be aware of that. Again, that should be identified in the notice of funding opportunity or the call for projects. And then all through your process, the process, consider public involvement. That's probably one of the things that, especially at the federal level, they're really looking for is that you have involved your community in your plans and in your priorities, and think about the users of the system. Is it going to be just motor vehicles? Is it going to be pedestrians or bicyclists? Or is it going to be children? Is it going to be elderly? Is it going to be people who have mobility or sight or hearing limitations? As part of that public involvement, kind of along with that, you're going to take that information and include that in your application to help the reviewers understand your community, the residents in your area, the users of the system, help them see the context of your project and explain your help them be part of what you're trying to do. The more they can feel a part of it and feel understand why this is a priority to you, a lot of times you'll get more points in that way. Now there are some projects, programs want to know about disadvantaged users or people who will be affected by your project. So you can look at disadvantaged census tracts, maybe Google or whatever. Justice 40 is a common requirement for projects to consider. Some look at workforce development, how you can improve that as part of your project. And I'm going to stop my list here, but some of these things are things that I've been talking about are things that your application may ask. And let's say workforce development, they ask a question about it. Well, if you don't plan to do any workforce development as part of your project, don't just skip it. And that would apply to any part of the application. They don't want to see it's not applicable. Explain why maybe it's not applicable in your situation and something that you're doing along the same lines. So it may not be something that you think really matches what they're asking, but is relevant in some way to what they're asking. Wish I had a good example of that, but maybe let's see, I was talking about disadvantage. So maybe your project area does not include any disadvantaged census tracts, but perhaps people work there that may be from some disadvantaged community. So although it's not actually, if they ask you to list the disadvantaged census tracts within your project area, you don't want to say, well, there are none. You maybe could say, no, but we have these communities that are coming to work in this area that are going to be served by these improvements. So try to find a way to not skip any questions, because you're going to get points one way or the other for that question, and so you don't want 0. Couple other things. NEPA, the National Environmental Policy Act. You're going to have to follow that on anything, especially that's federally funded. It can take a little while because you have to investigate many different types of environmental issues. So take that into consideration. And then there's been a question about letters of support. I would say that's going to depend on the type of funding. In some cases, it's just kind of a nice to have. Oh, yes, I'm glad that so-and-so is supporting this. But in other cases, it might be a lot more important to them that, oh, your U.S. Senator is in support of this project for whatever reason. Then there may be some benefits to doing that. Okay, I've been talking a long time. I just saw how late it's getting. So I got through what I was going to look at. So a lot of these ideas that I talked about, you can find on those websites that Kara put in the chat, on project readiness and tips and maximizing award success, some of those kind of things. So feel free to go through that. But the big thing right now is I'm going to open it up for comments, questions, sharing ideas, anything that I missed or anything that you have questions about. Now's the roundtable discussion part of our webinar.
Yeah, thanks, Nelda. This is Ian Hutchison with the City of Sterling. And
Oh.
Yes, I was
I
at
think the name sounded familiar. Sorry.
yeah, I was at the training last Wednesday. So I was looking through the Safe Streets for All grant specifically, but looking through how it's better if it, benefits disadvantaged communities. And it seems like in some places they were considering like rural communities to be disadvantaged, but like when you look on the actual map of where those are, there weren't any in Sterling specifically. So I was just wondering, sort of along the lines of what you're saying, don't say no to a question, find a way to sort of work and answer into it. If rural communities are sort of considered disadvantaged by just because they are a little more isolated from services and everything else.
Certainly, again, it's going to depend on the program, and I don't know the details specifically about Safe Streets and Roads for All in that regard, but most federal programs would most of Kansas would be considered rural. So now Wichita, Topeka, Kansas City, maybe not, but in some programs, even those are considered rural. So certainly I would assume most places, most programs would consider smaller cities or medium-sized cities in Kansas rural. So and most of them would then consider that disadvantaged. And it kind of depends. Again, one program I was looking at recently was you had to have 40% of the people within a census tract under the poverty level to be considered for whatever that funding was. But I think that's pretty extreme for most programs. I think most programs would not have that high level of cutoff for that disadvantage. You really need to look at the NOFO, the Notice of Funding Opportunity. A lot of times it will tell you what resource to use to check the disadvantaged population.
Yes, and it did have those. It had a couple of them actually, and none of them was Sterling considered disadvantaged because it's a good thing. We're just not that low below the poverty line. But it didn't really have a clear definition of rural in there, and it's sort of mentioned but not explicitly said that rural communities would be considered disadvantaged.
If it says that, I would certainly emphasize that in my application, and also probably having students coming in. They're even though they may not be included in your population counts or your census tract, I would assume that they're not having daughters that age myself. They're not going to have a whole lot of income. So those are things that you could mention if they're looking more from an economic standpoint.
Okay, thanks.
Anybody have any other great ideas? Things that may have worked for you in the past on applications, either at the federal level or the state level? Or more questions? If someone has a project and after their own research can identify a program that seems to fit. Yes, so the question is, we can't find a program that seems to fit what we're trying to do. And so where can we go? Again, I would suggest the infrastructure hub. They have people that are very knowledgeable about all the different funding sources. So I would say that would probably be my first recommendation, but feel free to contact me at LTAP. It's just nelda.buckley@ku.edu is my email. Easy enough. If you have questions about anything, and again, I may not know specifics, but hopefully I can at least connect you to the right people to help you find that, because there is so much funding out there. It's hard to believe anymore that there's not going to be a source that we can find some sort of funding. Well, feel free to ask more questions, but I will say that our next roundabout will be in 2 months. So it will be in June, the second Friday of every other month at 11 o'clock. Be watching for the registration link, just like you got for this one. To be honest, I've been busy and haven't come up with what our next topic will be, but we'll go back through and review those that we discussed last month. If anyone has anything in particular that you would like to discuss, feel free to send me an email. But we've got a list, so we'll be covering something hopefully that will be of interest to many people. All right, not seeing or hearing anything further. I want to thank you all for joining us today and hope you have a great weekend and find lots of good funding out there.
Thanks, Nelda. Have a good weekend.
You too.
Thank you, Nelda.
Thanks.